Computer. Well, hello everyone and welcome. We have a special guest with us today. So Sarah and I are very happy that we have Madhurima with us. And if you all read our our September magazine. Oh my God,
September, yeah.
I'm like, what month are we in? The summer's over, so sad. So
Norma is going
Madhurima,
to start. Norma is going to start celebrating Thanksgiving in October now.
yeah,
Oh,
I think so.
She's all
And
messed up. The months are all
it's
together.
it's awful. It's awful. But Madhurima gave us a beautiful article in our September magazine all about stress and stress management. And I love your energy, Madhurima,
Oh,
because you bring stress to a different level. And what I mean by that is you look at it in an approach where you make it like stress is no big deal. You're like, you have ways where you're able to take a situation and turn it upside down. So yeah, no, and I love, I mean, if I hope our followers will follow you. The link is in our magazine to follow you because you do bring us a wealth of tips and tricks and ideas on how to manage stress.
thank you
So
so
I
much.
want to I want to turn it over to you. I'd love for you to, tell our audience a little bit about you, how you got into this whole stress management. Um, I'm just going to
Yeah,
give you the floor because I know you know what to talk about.
yeah, absolutely. All righty. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful podcast. I am Madhurima Sappatti. I'm a global stress management facilitator. And what that means is I love supporting multi passionate, ambitious dreamers in managing their stress and preventing burnout so that they can manage their stress and prevent burnout and also achieve their dreams and goals in life. I am also on a mission to make stress management fun, which is why Norma was so kind to share that, I can take things and look at it from a very different perspective, which is honestly really high praise that I accept with all my heart, heart. And yeah, the reason why I got into this work and why I'm so passionate about making stress management fun is because number one, why not? I think a lot of us think about stress management and automatically think of it as this really annoying, soul sucking thing that is going to take time and energy away from personal and professional lives, which I absolutely get. Because I have been stressed out pretty much all my life and been through two major burnouts and have received my fair share of really bad advice, which was Madhurima, the best way to manage your stress is to not get stressed out. I wouldn't have figured that one out by myself. Thank you so much for gracing me with that amazing advice. And this was from a medical professional. So I had literally given up all hopes of ever learning how to manage my stress. For me, as a super ambitious kid, I was constantly on the crossroads of I need to give up my ambition or I need to learn to live with stress. And both of those options were harming because ambition was one of the biggest reasons why I was extremely stressed out. And that is not to say that ambition is bad. It's just that I personally, as an individual, didn't know how to harness the energy that comes with high ambition and utilize it to propel myself forward as opposed to hold myself down. And so yeah, it was always, you need to learn to give up your ambition or you need to learn to live with stress. And I realized that there needs to be a third option, which was learn how to manage my stress. And I promise you, it didn't come easy. It came after two major burnouts, having a proper midlife crisis in my early 20s, after having to quit two jobs. One, because I was burnt out like to a crisp at one of my corporate jobs, and other that I had to quit because of the pandemic. So I was extremely in the space of what is my purpose in life? What am I supposed to do? And that happened in my early 20s, which is not a fun vibe to be in, to have a midlife crisis that early on in life. And yeah, it was very chaotic. And thankfully, I had the space to actually be like, okay, but how do I go about learning to get back in touch with myself and reconnect with myself, because it was during this time when I was burnt out. One of the biggest, um, how would you say this? One of the biggest things that happens during a burnout is you are constantly viewing others and viewing yourself from a very negative perspective and lens essentially. So you're judging them, you're judging yourself, you're hating on yourself. And for me, it was a space of learning to love myself again and appreciate myself and the journey that I had been on. And once I got started on the journey, I also started to reconnect with myself and helping people reconnect with themselves, which led me to, with thanks to a lot of coaching and mentorship, led me to be like, okay, what else can I add into the space? Which was when burnout came into the equation and stress management came into the equation. And so eventually I landed here after a journey of 3.5 years, if you're listening to this podcast right now in September 2024, to help people, especially multi-passionate, ambitious dreamers, manage the stress and prevent burnout with fun. So yeah, that's me. That was a long answer. I am so sorry, but that was a
Don't be,
journey.
don't be.
Yeah.
I love everything that you said, and I agree mostly with everything that you said. I suffer with anxiety, and I always have a low level of stress or anxiety in my life, which sucks. And until very recently, people just told me that I had to live with it. Well, you don't really have to live with it. You can, there are a lot of ways to treat it. But again, medical professionals will tell you it's normal, it's life, move on, keep going,
Yeah.
But getting back to overwhelming, people always use the term overwhelm. Oh, I'm overwhelmed. Do you think, I mean, people use it in a negative sense, but it can be a positive thing to be overwhelmed with positives in our life, like with the ambition, for example. If you know how to use it, would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
I would. I mean, I feel like personally, as an individual, everything has a positive and a negative connotation.
Mm.
If I were to tell you that stress can be extremely positive and can actually help you motivate yourself and push yourself forward, because at the end of the day, stress is nothing but a spike in energy that happens within your body. And if you
Mhm.
know how to harness it right, you can actually push yourself and motivate yourself to work on the things that you need to work, as long as you also know how to get yourself back to normal. I think every word in this world, that would be a far this thing for some of the really negative words that exist out there. But I would say that if we were to shift our perspective, we can take a look at some of the words like overwhelm and stress and look at it from a positive space. At the end of the day, uh, even with when we are overwhelmed with positive emotions, I think we can always take a step back. If we feel like, oh, I'm overwhelmed with positive emotions, I think it's a great space to take a step back and settle down with it and explore and experience all of those emotions, so that we don't feel overwhelmed with it, but also so that we are able to experience and embody all of those
Enjoy
emotions.
them.
Yeah, and enjoy them. Absolutely. So I definitely think that these are moments, especially with words that can have a very negative connotation like stress and overwhelm. It's a great way, if we feel like, oh, I'm overwhelmed or I'm feeling stressed out, to take a step back and see how we can use this to our advantage to push ourselves forward, as long as we also know how to bring ourselves back to normal. Because being overwhelmed and being stressed is not a natural way for our body to be and
Yeah.
for our mind space to be in. And so if we are able to bring it back after utilizing it in a good way, I think that it works. Why won't it work? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned, how some stress could be good. Can you describe healthy stress versus unhealthy stress? How would
For
you
sure.
define it? Like if somebody is feeling stressed, how do they know if it's a healthy or if it's unhealthy where they need to get some support?
That's a really good question. I would love to bring into the space a beautiful law that was created called the Yerkes Dodson law, essentially, or the stress productivity curve. And that revolves around it being an upturned bell curve, essentially, which starts with us being absolutely having zero motivation and being zero productive to reaching a peak point and then once again crashing and burning. And in both these scenarios, the first option, I can't really explain it without an image, but we are essentially, there is bore out, which is kind of similar to burnout, but we don't have any motivation. We don't have any of that excitement to move us or propel us forward. We then slowly, if with a little bit of motivation, a little bit of positive stress or eustress, it moves into the space of our comfort zone, essentially a space where we can easily handle everything that's happening. So let's say if you are used to cooking for 20 people and randomly an order comes around that, hey, you need to cook for 10 people, it's still in your comfort zone because you're used to cooking for 20 people, but it's something that lights a fire up your butt, like, oh yeah, I have to get up and do this. So that's positive stress. That's the use stress space. We then reach a peak point, which is the peak of the stress productivity curve, where the stress is high, the productivity is also at its peak. This usually happens, if I were to explain it, um, college graduates who have to publish or share their report at a deadline. So like they have to share a project at 12 o'clock and they sit down at 10 o'clock at night to start working on it. And by 11:59, it's done. Something that they were probably procrastinating on for the past 2, 3 months, they finish it in 2 hours tops. Finish it, send it across. Now that's peak productivity. But what usually happens is post that, if the stress continues to increase, imagine the current went out or the electricity went out or they're not able to send it, then the stress starts to peak up. What usually happens after the peak point is the stress starts to actually bring our productivity down, right? We start to get frantic. We are like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? It gets exhausting. And if it keeps going on and on and on, it leads to the burnout space. So if I were to explain, good stress would potentially be stress that we have a good handle on, right? We feel like, I can deal with this though. I can still figure this out. I can still be in a good space. I can figure out whatever I need to do and come back to normal. And so I would say that's a good stress. Bad stress is usually stress that gets to a point where we feel like we are out of control. It's no longer something that we have in control, and we will have to look for external resources to help us get back to normal, or have to do like X, Y, and Z, like breath work or grounding, or a couple of different techniques to bring ourselves back to normal. Whereas good stress is stress that we can still handle. We have a pretty good handle on. I would say it really depends on, can we control it right now, or does it start to feel like it's out of our control? Even within the curve, I often tell people, like when I explain this curve to people, I have always received questions. Well, why can't I always be in peak productivity? I'm always going to push myself to the stress space where I am at peak productivity. And that's not good, because you never know when it starts to slip up. When your productivity starts to slip up, you're just like, I'm just going to push myself just a bit harder, just a bit harder. And you never know when the stress is going to catch up to you. And so my invitation is always to tell people, be in your comfort zone throughout your day, but make sure that there are moments sprinkled in throughout your day where you have to push yourself and stretch just a bit extra to kind of reach a really difficult task, come back to comfort zone. You know, I I have a very weird example for this, but I'm not going to share it because I don't know if it is a PG-13 podcast or not. So for those who need to understand, they might have probably understood, but essentially you have to be you have to be in the comfort zone. take Take yourself to the peak productivity a couple of times, but bring yourself back into the comfort zone, because we never know when we are slipping up, especially when we are in that high productivity craze. We never know when we're slipping up and it's getting too far for us to be able to handle it. And yeah, I hope that answers your question, or if it doesn't, I'm happy to look at different ways
Yeah,
to probably support it and explain it. Yeah.
no, it did. And I guess what I heard is almost like it's tied to a motivation. When there's a lack of motivation to do something, that's when it's almost like an unhealthy stress
Kind of.
versus
I
Now,
wouldn't say it's a lack of motivation. The curve in and of itself is just a way to understand when we are stressed out, or stress is often in that specific scenario at least considered to be motivation. So when we do not have any stress, if we do not have any motivation, we are not moving, we are not doing anything. But once that stress or motivation starts to amp up, that's when we start to be a bit more productive. It's like we will be lying on our butts all day long, not doing anything, and then suddenly we are like, oh shit, I have a project. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can swear.
that's
um
you
or
can.
like,
You're fine.
yeah, I have a project to accomplish. That's when you start to kind of get into gear. So I would say, if I were to explain it in the most easiest terms, good stress is when you feel like you're still in control and you can handle things very easily, and bad stress is when you do not have any control over your stress, when it
Mm.
feels like you are not the one in control. The situation, time, external factors like deadlines or people are the one in control. That's when it's starting to slip a bit into the bad stress place, where you can't really handle things that easily or that quickly. You can still handle it,
Yeah.
but it takes effort.
I fell at least when I was at university, I fell into that bucket. And even when I was in my corporate life, I fell into that bucket of procrastinate until
Mhm.
like, the 11th hour when it's due. And that's when I did my best work.
Exactly. And
The
that's
more the
honestly
more
true.
I thought
Yeah.
about it, the harder it was.
Yeah.
Where when I ran out of time and couldn't think about it and had to just do it is when
Yeah.
I did my best.
And that's true for a lot of people. And honestly, that is something that I'm constantly telling people. If you feel like you work well under pressure, set
Yeah.
fake deadlines, set earlier deadlines for yourself and hold yourself accountable to it, because that adds that value of pressure that, have consequences to not reaching your fake deadline. So, like, if you have to give a project in a month's time, make sure that you have set up the deadline for the 15th of the month, and be like, hey, if I do not achieve this particular task by the 15th, then I will do X or Y. Like, I will not really quote unquote punish myself, but have some consequence to it, right? So
Mm.
the deadline becomes real enough. And so by the 15th, you're probably like, oh shit, I have to do this. And so you kind of get into gear, put that pressure on yourself to push yourself forward. Once again, this pressure is positive pressure, positive motivation to get yourself into gear and start working on it. And once 15th, that date has passed, you have probably finished your task. You can just be like, oh, I don't have to do anything else for now. Like,
Mm.
there's no added pressure. Like, yes, you can absolutely leave it for the 11th hour. I used to do that a lot,
Yeah.
personally as well. No, not just because life was chaotic and crazy back when we were in university. And so, completely understandable. And that's, if you are one of the people who are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast who feel like you work well in the 11th hours, figure out what you can do to push those deadlines earlier, and really push yourself into that space of positive stress where you're like, I'm going to do this. Or even if it is not a punishment, I would say set up a reward. If I finish
Mhm.
this by this particular date, I am going to reward myself with X, or I'm going to reward myself with Y. I'm going to go to the bookstore. I'm sorry, I'm a nerd, you guys. Bookstore. Or I'm gonna potentially spend time with my pets or something like that, something that is a tad bit of a unique spin on things that you usually do not do. And hopefully that motivates you to kind of push yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No, thank
that's
you for
great.
that.
Yeah. A lot of people are like that. That was actually on my report card on in year 10. Like, works well under pressure. Okay, so when is stress confused with excitement, or excitement confused with stress?
Very good question. I want to take a second to think about it because I really want to answer this question well. um I think it is a very personal way of experiencing it. It's a very personal perspective.
Mhm.
Uh, I have a very controversial thing that I like to say that people usually get like, how can you say that? Which is usually that stress is a very internal thing because it's an internal response to an external situation. So I would say at the end of the day, if you're whether you're feeling stressed or whether you're feeling excited really depends on how you're internally responding to it, not reacting. Because by
Yeah.
default, when we feel like something that is out of our comfort zone, something that we perceive or that we consider to be real danger, we are reacting with stress. Our body automatically shifts into the fight, flight, freeze response. We are going to react with stress, but how are we going to respond with it? Are we going to take a step back and be like, you know what? More than stress, I'm actually excited to figure this out. I'm actually excited to meet this challenge in a new way. And so that's a shift in perspective. Once again, a very controversial thing. And I can say that because I was stressed. So you can't come at me like, oh my God, Madhurima, how can you say that? I have been stressed all my life, you all, which is exactly why that I can say this is how you react, not react, how you respond to situations. That's not to say that external factors can't be improved. If external factors are improved, there are less reasons for us to constantly be in the space of, am I excited or am I stressed? It's a lot about it being a balance of external and internal. But to answer your question, Sarah, and not to prattle on and on, you can see how excited I am about this. I would honestly say that it really comes down to how we personally view it.
Yeah.
If we consider it to be stress, it's going to be stressful. If we consider it to be excitement, we are going to look at it from a detective's perspective of I'm so excited to do this. How am I going to approach the solution or problem? What does this look like for us as opposed to
There are no problems, Madhurima, only
yeah,
solutions.
yeah. Exactly.
I'm coming from that kind of spirit here.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That's a very good way to look at life in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that was excellent. I always thought that, and I'm glad that somebody else thinks like that as well, because it at the end of the day, it's very personal. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And it all depends of your own experiences that you've had before and what, in life and your traumas and
Mhm.
whatever you have
Yeah,
lived with. So yes, thank
I
you.
love that. Let's go.
So, Sarah, you mentioned there's no problems, only solutions. And, to me, that's our self-talk, right? How we
Mm.
talk to ourselves. And what are your thoughts, Madhurima, on self-talk? But in addition to that, I mean, we know the way we talk to ourselves can definitely have an impact on how we think, how we feel, how we act.
Mhm.
But with that, also affirmations, journaling, how do you see all that coming into play? What are your thoughts?
I absolutely love your question because you also touched up on how we think, how we feel, how we act, which is such an esoteric principle of life, but also something that's how we usually respond, how we think with our prefrontal lobe, how we feel about it with our limbic system, and how we act with our brainstem, and essentially how we act in life. So I love that question. And I absolutely agree with positive self-talk and journaling and affirmations. I wasn't so hyped up on this, if I'm being completely honest, when I first started out, because I was, at least in the start of my journey, constantly thinking of this as a hippie way of living life. I'm not even gonna lie, right? Like at the start of my journey, spirituality during the pandemic space was one of the biggest things that helped me reconnect with myself. However, I had such a negative perspective with spirituality just because of the way that sometimes we had such negative media here in India around spirituality for a while during my teenage years. And I did not want to associate with it. And so that kind of carried forward through spirituality and learning to reconnect with what spirituality meant for me and learning to understand what self talk and journaling and affirmations mean to me. It was a journey in and of itself. But I absolutely believe right now, with reading a lot, looking at research that has been conducted around this work, that it is something that can be absolutely beneficial, because at the end of the day, it is us providing commands to our brain, which is our computer system, that this is how we want to react and respond to situations, right? So if I were to tell myself that I deserve this life, I deserve everything that I'm looking for, that is a command for my brain that, hey, she deserves this, so bring it on. Like, bring more of this into her life. She's looking for this. So open up your eyes and like focus in on things that might be something that she deserves. And so I am a huge believer in that. And I think stress can be also dealt with and overcome with and managed with a lot of positive self-talk, affirmations, and journaling, because it's a great way to understand yourself. It's a great way to look at life like this. A great way to explain this. Oh, I've said great way too many times. I was like, wow, you're saying great way too many times. There we go. Okay, I guess it's a great way. Okay. Uh, let's break down these three things into two things. Let's put together self-talk as well as affirmations together. I think these two things can be really awesome in helping us manage our stress, because a lot of times stress comes from mindset blocks and beliefs that we have. Sometimes limiting mindset blocks and beliefs that we have. And so for a really long time, it is this internal friction of, I know I deserve the world, and internally feeling like, but maybe you don't. Maybe you deserve to suck in life and stuff like that. So that's a lot of internal friction that's happening that's leading to stress. And because I have worked with so many people, it always inevitably boils down to, at least in one of those factors, it boils down to limiting beliefs that are holding us back, things that are preventing us from living life as much as we want to live it. And so I think with positive self-talk, with affirmations, is a great way to shift the mindset belief into a belief that we want to have. And the more we think about it, the more we use affirmations, the more we use positive self-talk, it is essentially a great way to strengthen the new mindset belief we have of, yes, we deserve this world. But if we keep repeating it to ourselves, it's just these commands constantly coming in. It's proof for our mind that, oh yeah, you know what, I guess Madhurima deserves it, I guess Sarah deserves it, I guess Norma deserves it. And so it strengthens that mindset belief further and further until this is the new mindset belief that we are acting from. And this is something really dope called neuroplasticity, which I would invite all you amazing individuals who are listening to this and watching to this to check out. It is so exciting.
That's going to be our next conversation with you, because I'd love to learn more about neuroplasticity.
Oh, it is so good. I mean, I am not an expert on it, so I can't. I'm just going to harp on from whatever I've learned so far. But yes, that is such an amazing topic to check out as well. And when it comes to journaling, I think journaling is a great way for us to be able to express ourselves. A lot of times we have essentially learned to lock everything up inside, right? Like, let's brush it aside. Oh, you're struggling, let's brush it aside. It's normal, everyone struggles. Oh, you're stressed out, everyone's stressed out. Oh, you're burnt out, it's a badge of honor. Oh, it's not
Exactly.
something that you need to focus on. It's not something that's like, dope enough or like important enough to tell the world about. So we are so used to brushing aside not only the big things, but also the small things, that it settles in. And all these emotions and all these feelings stay stuck in the body. It does not have an opportunity to move through our body, which is I learned this amazing thing, which was emotions is nothing but energy in motion. But we are not allowing that energy to move. We are keeping it stuck, and it stays stuck. Trauma gets stored in our body. Capital T trauma, small t trauma, it gets stuck in our body. Right. And so, with the help of journaling, whether you love to journal through written words, so grabbing a diary and writing everything down, whether you love to journal by speaking it out loud, right? Like just probably getting a camera in front of you and speaking it out loud so that it feels like you're talking to yourself, or even if you're just speaking in your mind and allowing that energy to move. All of these are a great way to help the energy to move and eventually regulate your emotions, that then helps you manage your stress, right? Sometimes we're stressed out just because someone said something, and it's like, how could they say that to me? Oh my God. Like, how dare they, blah, 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 brings up a huge bunch of our baggage in the forefront of our mind and leads us to experience stress. And sometimes emotional regulation can be a great way. And journaling is a great example to regulate our emotions, at least through written word. There are like hundreds of things that you can do, like with somatics and all of that stuff. But journaling is a great way to at least get started on the journey to be able to express your emotions and not brush it aside. So I'm a huge believer in all these three things, and um, constantly trying to incorporate those habits into my life. Like at least once in my day, I love to journal by writing things down, but I really can't sometimes be bothered with it because life happens and I'm like, I do not have the time to grab a book and write anything down right now, which is understandable. Life is crazy and chaotic, y'all. So what I tend to do is when I am doing my course around the house, when I'm like cleaning the house and all of that stuff, I am constantly having conversations with myself about what's happening, what do we need to talk about, what do we need to have a conversation about. And it's a great way to journal because you're at least getting that energy moving through your body, you're not dismissing it. And that in some way, shape, or form usually helps me regulate my emotion and prevents it from bubbling over or making me feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. So yeah,
That's
long
beautiful.
answers.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I do that. I talk to myself all the time, like I'm going through all life that I live, I go through it again in my head and just let it all out because it's very heavy. It really is. I love that.
That's so beautiful. Yay, let's go.
Yeah.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I mean, such a wealth of information you've just given us.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you like to read and books and things like that. Is there a book that you can recommend to our readers, something light on how to manage stress or, a good book that, not too heavy and not too scientific, but
Yeah.
something.
You know what? There are so many books, and while I love to read, I don't really love reading nonfiction. It's just something that I've picked up because of the work that I do. And like, I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna read through it. But I would say a really good book to read would be Burnout, How to End the Stress Cycle or How to Complete the Stress Cycle. I think it is. Hold up. I have it in my diary. I have it in my I have it in my Audible because I listen to books on Audible when I'm roaming around the house like a crazy hooligan. But it is a very good book by Emily Nagoski. Hold on. I'm not
I-
gonna butcher it.
Can you spell it? Can you spell her last name?
Yeah, I'm
Emily?
gonna figure it. Yeah, 1 second. Let's see. There are some good books. Like I have a bunch of books, but some of the books can get heavy. Like it took me 2-3 months to go through those books because they were really heavy in terms of
Yeah.
emotional trauma that comes with it, which made me really I don't want to say that. I don't want to talk about it or I don't want to read that book, but I'm gonna find it. Just
Well,
gonna Google
you
search.
can always message us and we can add it to the
Yeah.
notes.
Yep. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna find it. I've searched that book way too many times. Yep. It's called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily Nagoski and Emilia Nagoski. That's Nagoski. And that has some really good ways to help you man. I mean, it can a couple of times get heavy, I'm not gonna lie, which is the thing with all stress management books. It kind of
Yeah.
gets heavy. So, but it is a really good book. It has a bunch of stories in there, so it's easier to read. And it has a bunch of things that I have started to incorporate into my own practice as well. Ever since I read the book, it was like, oh yeah, this validates so many of my own ideas because I'm very creative with helping people manage their stress. So it's usually, let's see if this works, let's see if that works. It's a very experimental thing, but that book really validated a bunch of my creative ideas. I would absolutely invite you all to read the book.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you
I have
have
one last
two?
question.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, it's just to finish. It has nothing to do with stress.
Yes, go for it. I mean, I'm open to all questions. Lay it on.
Can I, Norma? Do you want to
Yeah.
talk more about stress, or is it okay if I ask my question?
Yep. Nope. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah. Okay. So, Madhurima,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna talk about love. Is that okay?
Go for it. I love love.
Okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
It's my question.
Go for it. Go
So,
for it. Yep.
do you agree that one person is only capable of loving another to the level that they love themselves, of their self-love?
That's a very good question. I think one person is more capable to love another person more than they love themselves, but it is a question of how much do they think they deserve the love that they are receiving. They are capable of giving way more than they are loving themselves, right? So it's like I
Hmm.
might love myself at a zero, but I might be able to give 100% of my love to someone in front of me. But when that love is reciprocated, it is a very difficult thing for me potentially if I am loving myself at a zero to be able to receive the love. Even if it is at a 10, even though I'm giving 100, I'm getting 10 back. That might be like, oh, I don't deserve it though. I don't deserve this love because I have myself at a zero, right? So for me personally, I believe, and this is a very personal opinion, but it's not about how much I can give, it's about how much I can receive. And that definitely depends on how much I love myself. If I love myself at 100, I am absolutely going to invite people or fall for people, not fall for people, but at least be in a space where I would be like, but I deserve 100. If you can't give me 100, if you can't give me a 200, if you can't give me 100, at least give me an 80. You can't love me at a 10 when I love myself at 100. And it's going to be a very difficult conversation, but people eventually reach that point where they're like, I am not getting as much as I am receiving. And that inadvertently leads to burnout as well, where you're like emotionally burnt out when you're loving someone. You're in the space of like, I am not getting what I deserve. And so, yeah, that would be my response to your question. I don't know if it answers
That's a
It
or,
great
does.
question,
It
Sarah.
absolutely does.
yeah,
Very, very good
Sorry?
question. That's a very good question.
it
I ask it
is.
of everybody that comes talk to us.
Oh, I'm glad that you asked me this question. It's a very good question.
Yeah. Well, thank
Okay.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
I mean, it's been such a pleasure having you. We loved your contribution to the magazine. We look forward to further contributions from you. And, you're more than welcome to write more articles because people absolutely loved it and we loved it. So we
Yes.
appreciated
Absolutely.
your time with us. So one interesting fact that I want to
Mhm.
mention to everyone about you, because I find it very interesting, is your, I don't want to call it sleep cycle, but essentially
Uh-huh.
your sleep cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. I am a night owl for everyone who wants to know. I am up till 4, sometimes 6 in the morning, and I wake up at like 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon. I'm still like, ugh. Yeah, but I'm a night owl. I can't. I have tried. Good Lord, you all, whoever's listening or watching this, I have tried my butt off. I still don't have any idea how I used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to school and university. I have zero. I don't even know who that person was anymore. Because I'm like, I can stay up all night long, but if you want me to get up in the morning, oh, you will have to sacrifice like 10 bulls or something like that to help me get up. And don't sacrifice animals, guys. That's
So
not the point of the story. But yeah,
you essentially work on Eastern Standard Time.
yes, kind of. Yeah, absolutely. Because most of my clients are also from the United States and Canada, but it's honestly a lot of times an excuse because I'm a night owl and my family's like, you need to go to bed early. I'm like, I can't though. I have clients, eh? And they're like, oh, you have clients. All right. You gotta yeah, stay work. I'm like, yeah, I know. But honestly, most of the times it's an excuse so that I can stay up all night long.
Yeah.
I'm a
So
vampire.
yeah, one last question is you
Yes.
mentioned that you have clients in the US and in Canada. So you do one-on-one coaching, you do
Oh
group
yeah.
coaching. So just if you want to just take a minute and just talk about that, how people can reach you and
Thank you so much. Yeah. You can search for me on the net. I am thankfully fairly popular. You can just write Madhurima Sappatti and you can reach me on all my social medias or just write my name madhurimasapatti.com and it will lead you to my website. Where if you scroll to the very bottom, you'll find a resources page for a bunch of fun resources that you can access that are complimentary resources as well as paid ones. So you can reach me there. And the way that I work with people, I love working one-on-one because I feel like stress is such a personal thing. It's very unique to every individual, and everyone has specific triggers that stress them out. So I can't like bottle it all up into one thing and be like, here's why you're stressed. Huh. It's very unique to every individual. And so I love being able to open a space that's safe and judgment free for them to be able to share without feeling like, oh, someone else is judging. Like Madhurima won't judge, but someone else might. So I love working one-on-one with people to be able to support them. And yeah, you can absolutely get in touch with me on any of my social medias. And I would love to know. Right now, specifically, I am providing a VIP session. I'm providing a VIP session to help people manage their overwhelm. So whatever might be extremely stressful for you, if you feel like you have a plate which is filled with 10, 15 overwhelming things, we are going to work together to get some of the main ones off of your plate so that you have a lot more clarity in your life and you can stabilize yourself before moving forward and exploring life and even exploring stress if you want to, but exploring life in general and being able to kind of ground yourself a bit better. So if you want to learn more about that, absolutely get in touch with me because I would love to support you. But yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And we'll certainly be in touch with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's such good conversation. Yeah. Thank you.